Hello, I'm Mike and this is the Enthusiast experiment. If you're new, welcome. If you're not, welcome back. Today we're doing a quick review of the DualSense controller. I have promised this doing my PlayStation unboxing, which I'll link up at the top if you haven't checked that out yet. To do a review of the DualSense controller and the headphones after putting some hours behind them in some actual playtime on the PS5 through PS5 games and PS4 games on backwards compatibility mode, and I have done just that. Definitely put a huge chunk of hours since launch through a number of titles, beat a few PS5 games already, Astro's Playroom and Bug Snacks, which was great. Don't sleep on that, especially if you have PS Plus, it's free. And then have played a few backwards compatible games, beat Maneater, played through Days Gone, stuff like that. So definitely put some hours behind this in both PS5 and PS4 titles. There are still some PS5 titles I want to try out. But anyways, before we get into that, here's a look at the box. I did end up picking up a second controller for a reason, which I'll discuss in just a moment. If you haven't seen that video, I'll post that up here as well. With broken DualSense already, and it was the one that came with the PS5, so I picked up another one. I'll give you guys a look at the box here because I do like to do that when I have them. So here's the box for the DualSense controller for PS5. There's nothing really on the side other than the compatible hardware and the contents, which is the controller and an instruction manual. There is no charging cable, but one does come with the system itself, so just be aware of that. And to heighten your senses, again, you guys can pause the video if you want to read all of this, but basically it does have the haptic feedback, the adaptive triggers, the microphone, and it is a very, very comfortable controller. So let me set this aside and get into this. So I do have it on right now. Astro's Playroom is playing in the background just so I can demonstrate some of the features, which I may just throw up another video over top like I did with the other review. The adaptive triggers are so cool. Everything feels really, really good. As you can see, I am player one. That's a really cool feature of the DualSense versus the DualShock. It's really, really easy to tell once you have multiple. This will be 1 light, 2 lights, 3 lights, 4 lights for all the different players. The side lights also light up a different color. It may look a little dim. I actually turn my brightness down just out of habit from the DualShock 4 to save a little bit of battery life. I don't think it matters with this. I didn't do it to save battery life. I actually did it because I leave the mute button on all the time, and by turning down the lights, the mute button light is a little bit dimmer, which is nice. And the reasoning behind that I learned was some games that use the haptics and the adaptive triggers, if you do not have your mic button muted, it'll actually turn your settings for the haptics and I believe the adaptive triggers as well lower, so that the microphone doesn't pick those sounds up as much when you're using the built-in controller microphone. So if you have that turned off, if you mute your microphone, it'll keep those settings as you have them, which for me, I left them on default, which is strong for the adaptive triggers and strong for the haptic feedback. So that is something to be aware of. You can turn it on in the settings to where it'll auto mute your mic. So that's what I've done. So every time I turn on the PlayStation, it auto mutes. Don't get me wrong, I love that there's a button here. And I love that we have the option of a built-in mic for the controller now, because then you can use any headset plugged in, have the 3D audio, and still have a microphone without having to buy a headset with a built-in microphone. Awesome. Thank you, Sony, for doing that. My only two things is I kind of wish it was on mute by default by having those adaptive triggers and haptic feedback affected. I think that would be a little bit more of effective implementation, and maybe the light would be green when it's on instead of red when it's off, since it should be off by default, if all that makes sense. And then the other thing I have is a little bit of a feedback for me. I don't know if this affects anyone else, obviously. This is purely my review, I guess, so it's my opinion. But just out of the way that I hold the controller and the natural placement for me, I really feel like it's a little bit, I always push the PlayStation button with my right thumb. I feel like it's in a good spot if I push it with my left thumb. I don't know why there's a difference there, but for me, I really wish the PlayStation button and the mute button were flipped. I think that would be perfect. It's a little bit of a reach kind of around this analog stick for me to hit the PlayStation button, and you hit it a lot. I'm actually using it way more on the PS5 than I did on the PS4 because of the cards and all of the things that are kind of the built-in functionality around the PlayStation button now for this generation to get like, you know, hints or tips or tricks, or to switch back into like see if your friends are online, maybe to switch to play another game, all that kind of stuff. So I'm actually pushing the PlayStation button way more than I did on the previous generation. So I kind of wish it was in that easier to reach spot since we're pushing it more frequently, and then having something that we use less frequently kind of in that harder to reach spot. But I know aesthetically, obviously, this looks a lot better. But yeah, honestly, that's really the only negative of the controller, besides the issue, which I'll describe in a second. But I love the feel. The heft is great. I don't think this is a DualShock 4. I figured I'd get the white one just to compare as close as I could, apples to apples. I feel like it's probably a little bit heavier, but it just feels more stout in your hands, and the build quality it was already good with the DualShock 4, but it's insane with the DualSense. I mean, the solid kind of like construction that they went with this time, while it does make it harder to take apart and kind of like fiddle with yourself, I think for the average person, having a stronger, like way more sturdy built controller is a better thing than having one you could take apart and that could break easier. This just feels solid, man. All the buttons are awesome. I have seen some like people online saying like maybe their D-pad's a little jacked up. Everything on mine is fantastic. Really, 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 really good. Battery life is pretty good. I actually think it's still better than my DualShock by a pretty good margin. And as you guys see, I'll put another video up here, so many links, but I did buy the charging station, and it makes it super easy. So I just plunk this on there when I'm done, and there's always a controller ready to go. So I've never run into any battery issues. I think part of that's the DualSense and part of that's the charging station, but I haven't had any issue with battery life. I've tried the headphone jack. It's really, really good. I do have the actual PS5 wireless headset, and I love that thing, but I did want to try this. It's great because I do have some pretty good headphones, so now I can actually use those with the system as well. If the wireless ones die, plug those right in, good to go. And then if I'm playing online, I have the mic. So I mean, I really like that they threw a mic in here. I feel like the share and like option buttons are way better this time around than these guys. Placement and everything. This is a little thing, but I wanted to mention it. This video is going to go on forever, and it's all just about a controller. With the DualShock 4, they had this sticker, and I don't know why, but like where my fingers rested, it was like, it's not on this one, it's not my main controller, but my main controller, it's like peeling up, and it was just really annoying, and it was always like rubbing my fingers, and just like the textural difference. And I know it's nitpicky, but like, well, what else am I going to talk about, right? I love that they kind of screen printed this onto the controller now, so there's no interruption in the surface. It's totally smooth. That's phenomenal. I love that. So no awkwardness on the rear of the controller, nothing. I mean, they did such a good job. Touchpad still works really great. Has a nice click to it. I like the relocation of the light bars. It is kind of a bummer we can't use this with PSVR. That's probably one of the negatives, is having to go back to use this with PSVR, if that's a thing. It is for me. I think PSVR is amazing. It's kind of ridiculous, some of the experiences I've had on that, and I was actually a VR hater in the early days until I tried one of the PSVRs out, because I had tried some PC VRs and just wasn't impressed. But man, some of the games I've played on PSVR have been insane. But anyways, yeah, I am thoroughly impressed. I think the button is one of the only kind of like negatives. The placement I wish was swapped around. And now I guess the biggest issue, before I get into that, one of the things I do want to see, so it's kind of funny, in the past couple of generations, PS3 and PS4, maybe it was PS2 and PS3, I would always try and seek out the white controllers because you would have to import them from Japan. So it was kind of like sick, man, you got the white controller. It was like a cool thing to do until they finally came over to the States, but Japan always got the white controllers first. Yeah, I think it was PS2 and PS3. So I continued that with PS4. I did pick one up. It wasn't as, cool because it was easier to find. And now it's kind of funny that like we get one by default. I'm bringing this up because colorways are going to be a thing, and I kind of feel bummed here. Let me grab another controller. I kind of feel bummed the way Sony handled the DualShock 4s because I was not a big fan of the two-tone colorway. Again, this is purely my opinion. I know there's probably a ton of you out there that loved that. For me, I just really would love to have seen... They could have done this and kept it and then had a few that were the same color. I think would have been better. This just like looks kind of to me. This looks really good. This is a good implementation because it's such a stark difference. But what I'm getting at is I hope when they come out with colors, like let's say they do a gold controller again, like this, and you can see how there's those two different colors. I hate that. I wish it was all the gold color, right, instead of this weird color on the texture. Maybe it had to do with the texturing pattern that they couldn't match or something. I don't know. I hope they sort that out. But what I'm saying is, like, I hope this isn't gold and this is black, or this is gold and this is a weird gold and the buttons are still white. Like, I've seen some mock-ups where it's like the black controller but the D-pad and the buttons are still white, and that looks hideous. Sony, please do not do that. Bring back like the black buttons if you're gonna make a black controller. But I really miss kind of like the earlier PlayStation days where like the whole controller was the same color, because it just looks cooler. And it doesn't, I mean, I don't care about gold, just like blue, red, whatever, clear, like all those, like it just looked so much cooler when it was the same color. So I really, really, really hope, please, Sony, please, when you do come out with the colored variants of the DualSense, please take that into consideration. And you change the buttons. It's cool to match black with black. Please just don't leave these white D-pads. They look sick on this controller, but on a black controller, that would be terrible. Okay, let's get these out of the way. Sorry about the length of this video. Apparently, I'm very passionate about this new DualSense. Overall, before I get into the negative, because I don't want that to detract from the awesomeness of this controller, because that could easily be, well, user error, obviously, but this for me is a 10 out of 10. I mean, bringing in the new generation right, really keeping the familiar PlayStation feel and look and elevating it. Like, I loved the DualShock. I loved the DualShock 4, DualShock 3, all of those. This takes that to a whole nother level. And I was kind of worried because the haptics in the Switch controller, like the vibration, are garbage. Like, they announced all this like cool stuff and I was so excited for it, but it's so weak. Like, it's so weak that I was worried that when Sony switched over, it would also be a really, really weak vibration. You do not have to worry about that. Sony's motors are much bigger than Nintendo's, and there's two of them. They are huge. So like, when there's strong vibration, there's strong vibration. I mean, there's even stuff like, this was a cool implementation in Bugsnax. Sometimes it rains and you're walking around and you can feel like the of like the thunder crashing like far away through the controller, and it kind of like somehow like resonated through my body and made it feel like what it would feel like if thunder struck like a far away. It was really cool. It's so simple, such a simple touch, but like those little things draw you in so much further. And sometimes it would thunder before it would rain, so I would know the rain was coming, so I could run over and grab a certain bug that only came out when it rained, like little things like that. Anyways, so don't worry about the vibration. It's just as strong, if not stronger, than what you could have got like on a DualShock 4, but way more precise. So they can do so much cooler implementations than normal. The triggers are also, I still have Astro popped up, that's why it's on. Man, I cannot wait to see what developers do with this. Especially, I'm a huge Gran Turismo fan. I'm so excited to have like a brake pedal with feedback and a gas pedal with feedback. That's going to be insane. I'm assuming that's what they're going to do. Yeah, 10 out of 10, blown away. I love that they included a mic on the controller. I do wish it was implemented a little bit differently, but they do give us the ability to like auto mute, which is nice. So not a deal breaker by any means. Thumbsticks still feel great. Everyone says it's the same ones as on the DualShock 4, but for whatever reason they do feel a little bit stiffer, like a touch more resistance. It just feels better. I don't know if it's because the controller fit in your hand or whatever. Yeah, D-pad feels great. I haven't played any fighting games yet, but No problems there. No problems with the face buttons. I mean, I'm in love. I love it. I love it. I love it. Now, the one caveat, the one negative, you can see it still works. I'm going to show you that first. And I do have a video about it. Now, let me turn the controller off to demonstrate. And you'll see if I push this, the controller's off. It has built like a normal amount of resistance. So if you're playing like PS4 games on PS5, or just like, you know, if the controller's off and you're pushing it, there's a pretty good amount of resistance. But when I was playing Maneater, which is a game that basically requires you to just sit here and spam R2, I think something came loose on my R2, and now it doesn't really have any resistance. I mean, you can hear that's L2, that's R2. I mean, it even sounds different and feels way different. It probably takes a third of the pressure to push down now than it did before, or than like L2 does. So while it still works and the button still works and the adaptive trigger still works, the resistance is now permanently altered for games that do not use the adaptive triggers, which is kind of a bummer. So it's not broken per se, but it's definitely not functional in the way that it came anymore. And like I said, that could be user error. Just something I wanted to, you know, throw out there, try and be as transparent as possible with everybody. But thanks for watching. If you're still watching, this has been a long video. I apologize, but, you know, just want to give you all my full thoughts after having put quite a few hours behind this. So let me know down in the comments below. Have you guys picked one up and enjoyed the DualSense? Have you been over to a friend's house that has one and played with it? What'd you think? And then have you experienced any issues with the L2, R2 buttons like I have, or any other issues with the controller? I feel like everything else is pretty bulletproof. There's already been some testing where they guck it up and pour Mountain Dew all over it and everything like that, and it holds up well, and drop tests. So I have the full faith in this controller. I think it's built like a tank, and it feels phenomenal. It feels like a Ferrari, you know. Just that one issue. But thanks for watching. I do appreciate it. I would also appreciate it if you could like, share, and subscribe down below so we can grow this channel together. And until we meet again, take it easy.